What does it look like? What does it feel like? Imagination is the first step to liberation. And together we say the words, peace is possible and Black lives matter. We gather each week here in our beautiful sanctuary because it is only by coming together that we can create the world of our imagination, the world we wish to see. Please say with me, come, let us worship together. Are we on? There we go. I don't know about you, but I love that song. Yeah. So now is the time when we turn to our neighbors to either side, in front and behind us, say hello, give a wave briefly. There will be time after the service for more extended conversation. But for just a few minutes, let's recognize that we are not alone and that the presence of each one of us here matters. And hello to our Zoom friends. Okay, there's time for more of this after the service. We got a great service for you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Now it's time for me to talk. So I'm going to talk about politics and religion in our country. This country is polarized, and I'm concerned. You probably are too. We have possibly the deepest division since the time just before the Civil War. I'm really struck by how much of our deep divisions are based on religious differences. I'm asking myself, should I be reaching out to understand and make peace with people in other faiths that I radically disagree with, or working hard to defeat them at the polls? Maybe both. But first, I'm asking, how did we Americans ever get so deeply divided? Well, it started because of a big risk taken by the founders back in the 1780s. The risk was the separation of church and state in the First Amendment. Now, the First Amendment made two radical promises. One, our federal government would not sponsor any religion, and two, it could not stop anyone from practicing religion as they pleased. This was a huge break from all religions in Europe. Back then, in the 1780s, they all had state-sponsored religions over there, based on the divine right of kings. And other religions were often cruelly persecuted. Now, some Americans were worried that without an established religion, faith would decline in this country, maybe even vanish. But just the opposite happened. Today, the United States is the most religious of all the wealthy nations. And Americans have used their new freedom not to step back from religion, but to invent new religions, right? Mormonism, Shakerism, Christian Science, and Unitarian Universalism, and others as well. Many other faiths were invented, transformed, or imported. So, now, besides separation of church and state, the other major radical idea in the Constitution was that our government would not be a kingdom, but a republic, a government created by and answerable to its citizens, not to God. Back in the 1780s, no one quite knew what would be the relationship between these two radical innovations, freedom of religion and government by the people. Would they just develop in parallel without influencing each other? Unknown. Some people hoped religion, traditional religion, would provide a moral underpinning for a state. They were worried that in a country that lacked the official endorsement of God and a church, politics would become an amoral scramble for power. This is a genuine concern, right? But the problem with this idea of using traditional religion as for a moral underpinning was that the beliefs of Bible-believing Christians were very often in conflict with the Enlightenment ideas of the founders. So here are some examples that still deeply influence Bible-believing Christians and therefore today's Republican Party. I'm going to give you 4 examples here. First one, the Bible assumes and promulgates men's domination over women. And yeah, boo. And many Republicans still want to use the law to favor traditional marriage, the secular law. The Bible also assumes the existence of slavery and finds no problem with it. So a lot of Republicans still call the South's defeat in the Civil War the lost cause. They resist the removal of statues of Confederate heroes. Okay, here's the third example. Scientific thinking is non-existent in the Bible. The Bible predates science. Truth is to be proclaimed by God and voiced by clergy. Many Republicans still deny evolution. And finally, open-mindedness is suspect in the Bible. Both Jews and Christians in the Bible mostly assumed that what they believed was the only true faith. Free thinker used to be another word for atheist. Okay? Some Republicans still think Christianity should be strongly favored by our government. But over the course of American history, Christians have also supported some ideas that are very consistent with Enlightenment ideas, which means what we UUs typically believe. I'm thinking of 3 examples. The social gospel, which you may not have heard of, Catholic Church lobbying, and the vision of a beloved community. Exhibit A, the social gospel. This phrase refers to the fact that Protestant churches played a major role in the progressive movement, that's progressive with a capital P, of the 1880s through 1920s. A lot of American Protestants saw strong Christianity as the basis for a better, more humane society. Now, some of these Protestants were theologically liberal, but others were what we now call evangelical. To them, social reform was a prerequisite for the second coming of Jesus. The progressive movement supported things like compulsory public education, which was a big issue in those days. It's kind of an issue again. Public health, including compulsory vaccination. Cleaning up machine-dominated city politics, which was pretty corrupt. And women's suffrage. And the support of these Protestants, including some pretty conservative Protestants, theologically conservative, was essential for the success of all these political causes, which all seem very consistent with UU progressive values today. Here's another example. I don't want to give the impression that it was only Protestants. Catholics also. The Catholic Church has worked hard for causes that we value, we as UUs value. Since Catholics first began arriving here in large numbers in the 1840s, their churches have consistently pressed the government for more support for poor and for immigrants. And they have been sponsors of a huge network of schools, hospitals, soup kitchens, and other good works. Okay, and here's a third morally positive influence of religion on government policy. And there are more than 3. I'm just limited in time here. That third one is the civil rights movement of the 1960s. That movement led very directly to the passage of major laws against racial discrimination and also the Voting Rights Act. Many of its leaders were Christian ministers like Martin Luther King and John Lewis, many others as well. They gave the whole country the idea of the beloved community. The beloved community, an ideal world of peace and unity and harmony. And Martin Luther King also preached another radical idea, nonviolence as an engine of reform. This idea was embraced by many traditional Christians, though it actually originated elsewhere. It comes from Gandhi, a deeply devout Hindu, and from Thoreau, an American Unitarian. I was personally deeply inspired by the idea of beloved community achieved by nonviolent means. I wept when King was assassinated. Those brave practitioners of nonviolence kept themselves going in the face of horrendous beatings and murders by singing Christian hymns. They just changed the words slightly to give them a political meaning. The most famous of these hymns was We Shall Overcome, which we'll get a chance to sing later today. So after the 1960s, American religion actually became more diverse. The civil rights movement had directly inspired a range of other liberation movements: women's liberation, gay rights, environmentalism, legal abortion, and eventually trans rights. And along with the new movements came new religions or spiritual trends like goddess worship and deep ecology. The government responded with a lot of legal changes. There were new laws against sex and gender discrimination. Abortion was legalized. Numerous environmental laws were passed, and there were major changes in educational policy. All of this sparked outrage and backlash, this time from some Christian denominations. More than ever, American religions were at odds with each other. Traditional Christians, starting in the 1970s, became much more involved in politics as the new laws and policies threatened their values. They gravitated to the Republican Party, while the people in emergent religions and new spiritual practices gravitated to the Democratic Party. The Democrats also became the usual home of a rising number of atheists and agnostics. That really alarmed traditional Christians. Now, here's how all this has created the political crisis that I started with. Earlier, the parties had been places where people of diverse religious views could work together on common social and economic goals. A major function of our government has been to provide a space where diverse groups of all kinds can peacefully hammer out their differences and reach compromises that allow society to function. Americans have always fought hard for their interests and values, but our political system has had a lot of built-in mechanisms for softening these conflicts so that differences could be resolved peacefully. For example, major spending bills have always included benefits for both city dwellers and farmers. Well, that's all changed in the past few years. It's become almost impossible to pass major domestic spending bills or even to raise the debt ceiling so the government can pay the debts it's already incurred. Abortion used to be legal all over the country, but the states compromised, were allowed to require waiting periods and parental consent as concessions to the pro-life movement. Now, abortion is only legal in some states. Government has become more of a battleground than a peacemaking area. How did that happen? A lot of the answer is because religion has become a divisive rather than a unifying force. Religious differences over social issues, I would argue, are the main source of the intensity of the current presidential race. Even the hysteria over the border, I think, is in large part based on fears of the arrival of people who are not traditional Protestants. Inflation is now quite low, and the higher prices have largely been offset by higher wages, so it's not really about inflation. What's really tearing us apart is religious disputes over issues relating to sexuality and gender. The evangelicals think government should actively insert Christian values into government policies. At the same time, the UUA and its state political affiliates and other religious or secular liberals want their values enacted into politics. But things like same-sex marriage and legal abortion absolutely infuriate the evangelicals. They hate it when abortions are actually paid for by state governments like ours. Teachers and librarians tend to be liberals who accept changing attitudes about sex and gender. And that makes schools and libraries in evangelical areas into battlegrounds. In the evangelicals' view, the government is putting its stamp of approval on terrible sins. They want their religious views to set policy. Trump even says that God wants him to win the election. That's why that bullet only grazed his ear. We UUs know we don't have all the answers, right? We support freedom of religion, right? That means we don't want the laws to reduce other people's freedom of religion, right? Yeah. Of course, we need to continue fighting hard to keep same-sex marriage legal and to make legal abortion available to as many people as needed. These are basic freedoms, and frankly, I can't see how their existence really reduces anyone else's religious freedom. But should we really support lawsuits requiring people to use their artistry to make wedding cakes for gay marriages, even if it offends their religious beliefs? And should we be supporting laws forbidding public school teachers to inform parents if their children show an interest in being trans, even if the idea of transitioning to a different gender violates their religious beliefs? I'm not sure of the answers to these questions. It's tricky. But maybe we could contribute to reducing polarization by at least engaging in respectful dialogue with those who disagree with us. Mostly, I think we should listen, not attempt to persuade. After all, not too long ago, most UUs, not just a few, self-identified as Christians. And we still share many values with Christians. After all, we've been profoundly influenced by the social gospel, the idea of beloved community, and so on. Could we engage in dialogue with traditional Christians? Do we want to? Or would we rather go along with the way religious differences are tearing our society apart? We've talked about exchanging pulpits or sharing events with Black churches in Oakland. I love that idea. But it wouldn't contribute to narrowing the political gap that's tearing our society apart. Would we consider changes with white evangelical churches in Oakland? That kind of dialogue might make a difference in healing our country. I think we would actually find a lot to agree about. So I'm finally coming to the end of this. I'm going to end by quoting some things that Barack Obama said in his convention speech less than 2 weeks ago. He's always inspiring. So this is a quote. "We build all manner of walls and fences around ourselves and then wonder why we feel so alone. We don't trust each other as much because we don't take the time to know each other. And in that space between us, politicians and algorithms teach us to caricature each other and troll each other and fear each other." That's the end of that quote. Finally, Obama reminds us, the vast majority of us don't want to live in a country that's bitter and divided. We want something better. We want to be better. Yes, out of our best Unitarian Universalist selves, let us break down the barriers that separate us so that we can fulfill the vision of the founders: freedom of religion, working hand in hand with government by the people. And now, let us sing a hymn by a devout Christian whose faith taught him to give up being a slave trader. Amazing Grace. Okay, it's me again. This is the time to share with this community whatever is in your heart. Your get well wishes, your mourning for the dead, your joy on special occasions, your love for yourself and others, and embracing meditation. In one voice, let us say, we hold them in our hearts. And now, for a special performance, KJ Dalla will perform an annotation of their thesis research entitled Queer Incarnate Body. This piece is an exploration of queer theology, a personal narrative, and the lived body experience of being queer while growing up inside Christianity. You are all invited. I'm going to repeat a little bit the announcements you heard earlier. You're all invited to their dance show at this church next Sunday, September 8th, 3 to 5:30 p.m. And it's part of the Sapphic Sunday service on Oakland Pride Sunday. And for more information and also for a discount, just for UUs, just for us, see KJ next door in Wendte after the service.
This is my body. This is my blood. This is my body. This is my blood.
inside of the Eucharist, my desire for God is met by God's desire for me and for all of us. That the Eucharist is a mutual conjoining of bodies and desire. That the givenness of the body of Christ is met and ingested into the body through a mutual co-abiding of desire. And beloved community, this is queer incarnational theology. This is my body, and this is my blood.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, KJ. And now for my prayer. Oh, dear God, who holds the universe in a great web of love and joy and suffering and hope, help us understand each other so that we may live together in beloved community. Help us work out our differences in this world. You told us in the Bible to choose life. So can we find a way to be both pro-choice and pro-life? You told us in the Bible we should marry and reproduce, but you seem to accept polygamy and concubinage. So can we somehow agree to accept many different forms of marriage in our day? In the Bible, you smote our enemies, but you also told us to love the stranger, welcome the stranger. So, can we somehow agree to defend ourselves and also welcome others into our society? Dear God, if you exist, please teach us how to live together in acceptance of our differences within a framework of mutual respect and deep compassion. And now, Sarah Watts will introduce the next song.
Our next song is Ancient Mother. It is attributed to the Navajo tradition in our hymnal, but obviously since the words are in English, we know this version strays at least somewhat from the original form. The Navajo people, or Diné, as they call themselves, lived and still live in what we know as New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, and have a culture strongly connected to nature and the earth with an emphasis on balance with nature. Earth-based spirituality groups and others, such as Unitarian Universalists, have adopted this song to honor the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. So we sing it today, acknowledging its origins.
Please join me in singing. We'll sing it 3 times. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I've tasted your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. taste your tea. Ancient mother, I hear you calling. Ancient mother, I hear your song. Ancient mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient mother, I taste your tea.
Religion and politics. They're all about agency. Agency. That sense of control, capacity, or ability, of not being at the mercy of unseen or unpredictable agents, or at least understanding who controls what the rules are. It's what keeps us from hopelessness. Our national myths of anyone can grow up to be president, or the self-made man, these speak of agency, the power to do, to be, to become. And our political system is built on this idea that everyone has a voice, that we all get a vote. Democracy in its ideal is shared responsibility for our common good. We, the people, have a say, have power. At least that's how it's supposed to work. It's a powerful and motivating story, and it feels good to believe our future can be in our hands. We want to believe we are not at the mercy of fate in a totally random world, that there is some order to things. In fact, as humans, we so hunger for order, for reasons, that universally, in all cultures and in all parts of the world, we create religions to explain to ourselves why things happen, who holds the reins, to find patterns we can rely on to help us understand a vast world beyond our comprehension. And then over time, these explanations, these ever more complex arrays of gods and goddesses, sins and blessings themselves become ways to exert power over others, to control resources, and thus they become political. Every religion and every political system have at their core a question of agency. What values animate the world? What is our part in this structure? What is the guiding principle of power? Who wields it and for whom? And you don't have to believe in a deity or a great spirit. The answers to these questions give humanists or non-theists or free thinkers like me, too, a sense that our existence can have meaning and purpose. As I watched the Democratic National Convention recently, it struck me how much it felt like being at church. Well, except for the balloons and the funny hats. But many of the speeches felt like sermons, uplifting, challenging, poetic, and prophetic. The sense of the event for me was one of expansion and hope, a felt hope. Just as with our own church, where we have experienced in these past few years what losing heart can do, how tenuous that can feel. We know that reanimating ourselves with hope is the necessary first step in recentering our own agency, in reclaiming our capacities to do the work that needs to be done. Religion and politics are about how systems of power and agency work. And those systems work best with hope. They work best when based in love, and they can only work when we are all working together. And friends, there is work to be done. Neither church nor politics is a spectator sport. There is food to be served, committees to commit to, visitors to be welcomed, salaries and bills to be paid. Our resources are needed. And as part of our half-basket ministry, starting today with the end of the year, 1/2 of the money we collect from our collection baskets will be donated to the Segurate Land Trust, an organization, an organization that works to restore agency to the Native people who are still here. As the baskets pass, do we have ushers? Oh, we do. Please give what you can to support First Unitarian Church of Oakland. There are cards in some of the seat backs, about like that, with there we go, somebody's holding one up, with a scan code, a QR code if you'd like to do it that way, or we take cash the old-fashioned way. If you're visiting, please feel free to let the baskets pass. Your presence is gift enough. Thank you. Please say with us the words on the screen. the flame of our chalice is extinguished, but the hope and love and community it represents remain always.
And now for the benediction. Why don't you face each other across the center aisle? Look into somebody else's eyes and hold hands or touch somebody on the shoulder so we feel together as I say the benediction. As we walk out of this sacred space, let us work hard to elect our candidates for public offices. Let us engage in respectful dialogue with those who are supporting other candidates, remembering they also think they have in mind the best interests of this country and the world. And let us seek common ground with people of all faiths. Amen.